Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Worley. I'm the resident engineer for VDOT, for VDOT's Chesterfield residency. And I'll be presenting an update on the Old Gun Road roadway safety assessment that was kicked off a few months ago. So just a brief outline of the agenda. I'll do a brief discussion of what the RSA program is for VDOT, introduce the members of the Old Gun Road RSA team who's been participating on that team, as well as the crash data and field review that's already been completed and the preliminary recommendations that have been made, as well as where we are in the current process and next steps. So the roadway safety assessment is a formal study program of an existing or future roadway for by an independent and qualified assessment team. It's seen to be more of a formal structured process rather than just a cursory review of a specific location, and focuses solely on safety issues. For Old Gun Road, as you all, I'm sure, are aware, a fatal crash occurred there in April 2023, which tragically involved 2 James River High School students. VDOT's standard practice following any fatal crash on a VDOT maintained roadway is to do a review of the circumstances surrounding the crash and any potential countermeasures that we could implement that may assist in alleviating some of those safety concerns. Following that fatal crash in April, however, there was a desire expressed by both the public as well as elected officials to increase the scope of that fatal crash review rather than just review the specific crash, to do more of a corridor-wide study to focus on safety of the entire corridor rather than just the particular circumstances of that crash. This is difficult to see, I can tell, but this just outlines the process, the steps of the RSA process, from identifying the initial project scope, analyzing the crash data of the corridor, selecting the multidisciplinary RSA team, performing a field review, and then documenting those recommendations so that they can be implemented. This is just a list of the team members of the RSA study that's being performed. We tried to create a multidisciplinary team so that we could gain multiple perspectives on the potential safety issues out there. VDOT has contracted with Kimley Horn. They're serving as our consultant for performing this study. And then other members of the team include Chesterfield's Department of Transportation has 2 members. The Chesterfield Police Department, the Traffic Safety Division, is represented on the team. And then multiple sections of VDOT, including our traffic engineering group, our roadway design team, and then me at the residency representing the maintenance and operations side of the house. So the first step that the consultant took was to review the crash data. They took data for the past 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, on the Chesterfield County side of the Old Gun Road corridor. There were 38 total crashes, 5 of which resulted in severe injuries. 25 of those 38 crashes were fixed object, where a vehicle ran off the road and struck a fixed object. And then 25 of them were property damage only, where there were not injuries involved. It is important to point out that 2 fatal crashes that have occurred were not captured in that 5-year period from 2018 to 2022. So we have made notes of those locations as well, including the one that occurred this past April, and then a previous one that had occurred in March 2016. Both of those crashes involved high rates of speeds in excess of 80 miles per hour on the corridor. But important to add to the total crash data over that 5-year period. In diving deeper into the crash data, the consultant identified a few trends related to crashes during that 5-year period. Some important ones to note are that the highest type of crash was a vehicle striking an object off-road, a fixed object crash. That was 66% of the total crashes, followed by a handful of angle crashes that primarily occurred at intersections along the corridor. Almost 82% of the total crashes were non-intersection crashes. So while there were a few angles, a majority of them are occurring at other places along the corridor, primarily where individuals are running off the road at locations. Other trends that were also analyzed were related to driver behavior. Of the crashes that occurred, 21% of them were noted that the driver was distracted. 18% noted that speeding was involved, and 32% involved young drivers. So those are just some behavior factors that have also been considered in the crash data. A couple other factors that have been considered are the severity. So of those 38 crashes, 66% of them did not involve reported damages. They were reported injuries. They were property damage only crashes. 21% were severity type B crashes, which involved minor injuries, bumps and bruises. And 13% were severity type A, which involved more serious injuries. So the majority of them are still property damage, but we do have some injury crashes that have occurred, of course, along the corridor. Additionally, time of day was taken into account. Vast majority, 68% of all crashes occurred during daylight hours over the 5-year period, with the majority being in the afternoon to evening time frame from noon to 9 p.m. So once the consultant team performed this crash review, we did a field review under multiple field circumstances, daylight hours, evening hours, multiple times throughout the day to review the field conditions. This is an analysis that shows the curvature of the road. The consultant team used a ball bank indicator test, which is just an instrument that goes on the dash of the vehicle that measures the bank of the road as you're driving at the speed limit or at the advisory posted speed limit. Along the corridor, the blue line represents places where there was essentially no curvature, less than 10 degrees of ball bank angle. Yellow was locations where there was 10 to 15 degrees of ball bank angle, and greater than 15 degrees is represented in red. Those are places where the roadway curvature is the most extreme and has the smallest curve radius. You can see the consultant also overlaid that map with the locations where we currently have curve warning signs and speed limit signs as well. They do tend to align with the locations that there are curves for the most part, but there are a couple of locations where we currently do not have curve warning signage. So that's the westbound direction from the Chesterfield County line to Robius Road. And then the same thing was done in the eastbound direction from Robius Road to the City of Richmond line, again identifying where the roadway curvature is the most severe in relation to the advisory signs that are currently placed on the road. Additionally, the team did a sight distance field review at all of the intersections. As I noted, there were some crashes that were angles that occurred at intersections, so they wanted to measure sight distance to see if it was adequate at those locations. I won't go through everyone, but majority of them sight distance met our design criteria. There were a few where vegetation trimming will assist in increasing the sight distance, and there's a couple of locations where the roadway curvature itself does restrict sight distance at those intersections. In terms of speed limit, the current posted speed limit on this road is 35 miles per hour. Our consultant team did collect speed data and indicated that the current 85th percentile speed, so the speed that 85% of drivers are traveling at or below, is 44 miles per hour. So the average speed is exceeding the current posted speed limit. They did use a couple of industry standard tools that are available to us, the US limits and the NCHRP speed limit setting tool, to get some recommendations. You plug in information about driver speed, condition of the road, curvature, crash history, and those tools provide some preliminary recommendations for speed limit. Of those two tools, they ranged in the recommended speed, posted speed limit between 35 miles per hour, which again is what it's currently posted at, all the way up to 45 miles per hour in some of those recommendations. So to get into some of the proposed recommendations that we have so far, I will say this meeting is very timely because we just had a progress meeting on Monday with the team where these preliminary recommendations were given to us by the consultant staff. So we're currently reviewing the recommendations that they have made and providing feedback on them before they start documenting those recommendations and associating cost estimates to them for our planning purposes. So they've broken out their recommendations into short-term, intermediate-term, and then long-term recommendations, depending on how quickly they can be implemented. So in the short term, during the field review, there was definitely some notes of centerline pavement markings that needed to be refreshed. There's also consideration being given to edgeline pavement markings throughout the corridor. There aren't currently any out there due to the narrow width of the roadway, but given the number of run-off-the-road crashes, that's being considered as an option that may assist in keeping people on the road and potentially slowing them down a little bit since they have a narrower pavement width to work on. Additionally, there's some consideration being given to LED speed feedback displays, the pole-mounted speed displays that alert a driver to how fast they're going in comparison to the posted speed limit. We're reviewing that to see if those are warranted based on the current speed data. Additionally, there are some recommendations at the intersections. We've got kind of a standard unsignalized intersection signing plan that's shown in the upper right-hand corner, where we install signs indicating to the driver on the side street that the road, you must turn left or right rather than being able to proceed through the intersection, as well as some intersection warning signs have been recommended. And then we're looking at specific locations along the corridor where flashing lights on the roadway curvature signs may be helpful in alerting drivers to those more curved sections of the roadway. In the intermediate term, some of the recommendations have been to remove obstructions from the clear zone. If you're familiar with Old Gun, you know that there's a lot of trees lining the roadway, and they've been involved in a lot of the fixed object off-road incidents that have occurred. Right-of-way is very limited along the corridor. I believe it's only 30-foot prescriptive through most of the corridor. So if we were to remove some of the trees that are in the clear zone, probably in a lot of cases it would involve going to adjacent homeowners and trying to get permission from them to remove those trees, but there may be an opportunity to do some selective clearing to remove those hazards from the clear zone. And additionally, a safety edge, or it's called a safety wedge in VDOT's paving contracts, has been recommended as an interim measure. Whenever we have a paving project, now that's a standard line item in a paving contract. It's a 30-degree angle that the wedge of the outside edge of the pavement comes out at rather than having a steep drop-off. We can implement it where we have available right-of-way. So when this road were to come for resurfacing, that's something that we could consider that would allow drivers to have a little bit of time to recover and maintain their travel on the roadway rather than running off onto the shoulder. And then finally, long-term recommendations are full rebuild of shoulder width and widening the roadway. Of course, this would be very expensive. It would cost, we would have to acquire right-of-way, and it would be a major construction project, but that's a cost estimate that our consultant will put together for a potential long-term project for this road. So going back to the RSA process, I've just kind of highlighted we're currently at step 6. So their consultant is still conducting the RSA analysis and finding issues and concerns. So at this point, the consultant is receiving feedback from us. As I mentioned, they just provided us these recommendations on Monday, and we're reviewing and providing comments. From that point, the next steps will be for the consultant to document the full recommendations in a report, including cost estimates for each of the short, intermediate, and long-term recommendations. And then at that point, VDOT can work with the county to identify how these projects could be implemented. Some of the short-term ones are things as minor as maintenance operations that could be conducted immediately. And then, of course, longer-term full reconstruction projects would require some funding applications. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Board members. No question, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you very much, Ms. Worsley, for accompanying me and the citizen and Chelsea to the roundabout at Hopkins, one of my favorite spots.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your help. I'm looking forward to continued improvements in that. But thank you for your time. It was gracious of you to come out and spend the time with us and look at that site. Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you for coming out. It's really hard to find the words. When a community goes through this kind of a loss, you have the side of it of just having the loss, and then there's the side of it of just fixing it. Or another way of saying that is we can't bring them back. But what we can do is try to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And so I'm appreciating the way you're going about this, how VDOT's going about this, so that this does not happen again. What I've been communicating with my constituents is that any road in Chesterfield County that starts with the word old means slow down. So it doesn't matter if it's Old Buckingham or Old Otterdale,
Yep.
or Old Bonaire or Old Gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the information we need to communicate. I wish it were possible that we know we have a drinking age of 21. You're not allowed to go out and get alcohol. I sometimes think that there are some roads that under the age of 21, no one should be allowed to drive on. And anything that starts with an old should be communicated to our community is one in which extra special care has to be placed when driving. I live off of Old Gun. I avoid Old Gun because it is so challenging to drive it at any age. What is so important is that we create some measure of margin of error. And Old Gun is a dangerous road. And so I'm appreciating that we're going through this. I did have a question that I'll ask in a second, but until the problem is solved, it feels like the community is just sitting on pins and needles, waiting for the next tragedy. Because we've already seen with the numbers that it's almost like we're sitting on a ticking bomb. So we need to figure out how we're going to do this and do it at an expediency that makes sense. So my question for you is, what timeline? I mean, it still sounds like we have 3 next steps.
Mm-hmm.
I will be communicating as best as I am able to the neighbors to understand that I recognize that there's the possibility that maybe they will lose some part of their property, but the price is too high. And so I'm hoping that the neighbors in the area will understand that this is worth the compromise to be able to make everybody safer. So do you have a sense on when that effort will move forward with?
Yeah, so I'll just start with the short-term recommendations. Some of the more maintenance activities, we've already directed our staff to start some of the vegetation trimming at the intersections. There's no need for us to wait until the report is completed to start some of those activities. But I believe our next meeting is in about a month, when the consultant plans to have the report documented. And then at that point, we'd have the study available to start pursuing any type of funding applications for a construction project, if that was the direction that we wanted to go. But we could also certainly look at some of the intermediate solutions in the meantime until such funding could be put into place. So I think the way that they documented the different steps of the recommendations, we can certainly do some things in the shorter term while other opportunities are being pursued, so that citizens out there will see some changes and hopefully see some improvements in the nearer term. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to concur with my colleague, Dr. Miller. This is a dangerous road, and I really think you nailed it on the top of the head when you said room for error, margin of error, room for recovery. And just taking the 5 feet down on the both sides of the road, to me, would make a big difference. I think even starting there would, and that's, hopefully we could get that done relatively quickly, hopefully. So I would support any of those efforts. I also just want to chime in and, with my colleague, Mr. Holland, and say, thank you, Ms. Worley, for being so available to us. I hope nobody suggests we put her on payroll, but if they do, I probably had to second the motion, because she's been out to, I think, everybody's district for something over the last couple of months, my district a couple of times, and I just want to say that we appreciate you. We appreciate you listening and being a problem solver out there with citizens, like with my constituent, Ms. Gibson, recently. And so I just want to say thanks for that. Thanks.
Happy to do it.
I had a question on the data analysis. I saw the time of day analysis, but it didn't show whether or not there were weather conditions that could have contributed. For example, you have a lot of vehicles, 28 vehicles, I think, that left the roadway. And so some of that, depending on the type of year, could have been icy conditions, could have been heavily rain conditions, which makes the road even more dangerous than it actually is. Because, again, most of those crashes are actually occurring during the day. So it begs the question, if it's happening during the day, what else is going on that's causing vehicles to run off the road besides excessive speed? It is a very dangerous road. I've driven that road for the last 38 years. But we have a lot of dangerous roads in Chesterfield County. I can think of a bunch of them off the top of my head that also need to be addressed. But I agree that starting with, seeing if the neighbors, for example, don't mind donating their land in a measure to widen the road. No one ever wants to do that, by the way, but it doesn't hurt to ask. But what people don't realize in Chesterfield County, and it's a good time to bring this up, is we're the second largest road network in the Commonwealth of Virginia. With over 4,400 miles of roads. The only one larger than us from a road capacity is Fairfax County. So you actually have a really big job in supervising everybody in this area that actually has to come and maintain our roads. And a lot of people don't realize that VDOT is responsible for maintaining the roads in Chesterfield County. Because I get the complaints every day about when is my neighborhood going to get repaved. I sent about 12 of them to him last month for one of his neighborhoods.
Thank you for that, by the way.
You're welcome. I got a bunch going on right now because I have almost half the county. So thank you for all your hard work. I know that it is a lot to keep track of. I know that we bother you a lot with the different things. And I look forward, and I know the people in Riverway Road look forward to a solution that we can come up with down at that intersection other than bowling pins.
Yes,
So
sir.
thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to comment on the weather condition related to it. That was part of their analysis. These were the primary trends, so I suspect there wasn't a big trend in terms of wet pavement or icy pavement, but I can certainly bring that back to their attention and make sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, since Dr. Miller mentioned it, I have to comment on Old Lane too, which is another road in my district, and so his point is right on. And so I just want to point that out so you'll be on your radar as we look down the roads for Old Lane. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It starts in my district.
It's not a competition, honest. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here today.